outside? Should I run and hide? How do I take my company worldwide? Do you love the law? Did you watch Hee-Haw? What's the weirdest thing that you ever saw? What's it like in court? Favorite sport? Can you help with my book report? Is my hair too long? Am I right or wrong? And do you mind if I sing along to anything? Ask Alan anything in the world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Ask Alan, the podcast. I'm Alan Crone, the CEO of the Crone Law Firm, and I've got with me a great guest today, Mr. Paul Martin, who's Vice President of Health and Wellness at Trezvant Manor here in Memphis, Tennessee. One of the great assisted living facilities and communities. And Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Happy to be here.
Well, I mean, tell me a little bit, what does the Vice President of Health and Wellness at Trezvant do?
Pretty much anything that I get asked, but I have I am the administrator of the nursing home, so I'm over Alan Morgan. I have administrative oversight of the assisted living, Trezvant Terrace, anything that deals with the Tennessee Department of Health. So we do have a pharmacy on site that I'm overseeing, along with the life enrichment program and spiritual programming for independent living.
Very good. Tell us a little bit of the history of Trezvant. I know it's been around a while and has a great history.
Right. So we were incorporated in 1973, and we opened the original building, the 11-story tower, in 1976. And then in 1980, we added the first floor of the nursing home. And as we expanded and grew in 1988, we added the second and third floor of the nursing home. And then in 2008, we opened our two other towers, the 5-story independent living and the 4-story assisted living. And we incorporated some independent living cottages and townhomes.
Now, I know since the 70s, this service area of assisted living, independent living for seniors has undergone a lot of changes. What changes has Trezvant had to deal with over the years, aside from the current health situation?
One of the biggest things is just changes in regulations and how we have to do things. Part of that is what resulted in 2008 in us building our own assisted living building. Traditionally, it had been the third floor of the nursing home, but regulations changed and we needed to update and expand our offerings and what we do. And then just in the course of the nursing home, over several years and decades, there's been new regulations and changes. So we've added staff, we've added functionality, we've added services and programs that traditionally we have not had to, but with the change in the regulations, the change in the market, and in order to stay competitive, we've just done those things as we've needed to.
How long have you been at Trezvant?
A little over 6 years. I started in October of 2015.
Are you from Memphis?
Not originally. Grew up south of Jackson, Mississippi. So I'm a small town Southern boy.
Okay, well, that's good. Then you ought to be right at home in Memphis.
Oh, yes. Yes. Lived here since '92.
Okay. What brought you to Memphis?
Graduated with my master's in public health from the University of Southern Mississippi, and my older brother and his family were up here at the time. So came up and just thought I'd spend a little bit of time just relaxing before I started job seeking, and was offered a job, and I've been here ever since.
Well, I guess, you can't hide talent.
Well, thank you.
I ask that question a lot, how did you get to Memphis? And it's either a job or a spouse is most of the answers. Well, what's it like at Trezvant, these days? Are y'all still on lockdown? We're shooting this just to give people some context in February of 2022. How is your situation right now?
So right now it's good. So the independent living totally opened back up. We don't have any restrictions going on over there. And in the two healthcare buildings, the nursing home and the assisted living, we're following the CMS guidelines. So visitation is open as long as they can come in, they wear a mask, they do their social distancing like they need to. We're allowing guests, we're allowing them to eat in the dining rooms. We're doing activities, not as large as we've done in the past, but we are having people come in, entertainers come in, volunteers come in. So for a large degree, we're fairly back to normal, with the exception of staff are still wearing their mask. We do have to do some screening of staff and of visitors that are coming in, but we feel like we're in a good spot, both with our policies that we've implemented and also where everything is just from a infection rate across Shelby County.
Do you think there will be any lasting effects of the last year and a half, 2 years on your community?
Definitely. I think we've learned some things. I think we've identified some strategic areas that we can improve upon, particularly around how we control access to the campus, how we screen both staff as they're coming in, but also from a construction and design standpoint. Where do we need to do? What are the things that we need to implement as we move forward to make sure that the next whatever infectious disease that's coming out, next pandemic or anything, that we're prepared for. So I do think that there will be some lasting effects that we will see, which I think for the most part will be good.
Do you think as a society, and this may be over your pay grade and my pay grade, but I've just wondered over the past couple of years, as a society, have we taken public health, public sanitation for granted?
We haven't really had anything that truly has impacted society this way in, in 100 years. You had the swine flu, you had Zika, you've had the bird flu, but that never really had a true impact, except to a very small degree, upon the U.S. Even with some of the larger epidemics like HIV, those hit particular subsets. So it was nothing that was ever widespread. So I think what we're seeing now, hopefully it's not something that we see again in our lifetimes.
Because, it got to be a big deal about washing your hands, and what I mean by that is it's like all of a sudden this new technique of public health of, washing your hands more than once or twice a day, seem to take hold, and of course the masks and so forth. And I'm just wondering if, this isn't something that we're going to see even without a pandemic, just to keep the flu and other, what I'll call run-of-the-mill contagious diseases suppressed.
It will. And I think the heightened awareness of all of the public health efforts that goes into whether it's a respiratory disease like the COVID is, or whether it's something that is more contact driven, such as colds or anything that you would pick up, rubbing your eyes, pink eye, any of those kinds of things. I think the awareness is heightened, and I think people hopefully are more conscious of their own public health in what they do, not only to protect themselves, but also to protect the people around them and the community at large.
Well, what do you think is next for facilities like yours? Is there some innovation coming down the pipe, just in terms of how you run your business?
There is, and a lot of new technology has come out to help us, monitor air quality is a huge one. How do we clean and disinfect rooms for diseases that we typically had not been worried about before? So there is a lot of new technology with that. HEPA filters, both in the rooms, but also in common areas like hallways, and the UV lights that can now be installed. So there's a lot of technology that's coming out, some innovations, also how you design and construct ventilation systems. How do you design and build so that you can segment different parts of a building if one building, has a mass infection of any type? So how do we do that? So I think there's a lot of stuff that's coming out, and I think you'll start seeing a lot of that being produced in the market, particularly with new builds in the very near future.
How about socially? You had a lot of lockdown time and where, it was very insular. Any social innovation you see coming out of that? Are y'all using, Zoom or VR or anything to more than you were before?
Oh, absolutely. We're doing lots of FaceTimes, particularly for families that don't live in the area. We've done Zoom meetings. We've done isolation rooms where, plexiglass and different things where families on one side and residents on the other. So we do know that it is an option, but it does not take away from the fact that these families need the interaction and they need the touch. And so I think what you're going to see is a lot of new ways that we allow families to interact, and how do we allow them to interact, and how do we use technology in a way that benefits both the families and the residents when there is such a distance and they can't connect by being there in person. So I think that is one. A lot of the new technology that's coming out are some of the cameras. And so in some of the other technologies that allow you to speak and talk to mama, even though she may not be able to pick up the phone or there may not be somebody in the room. We've got several families that have a picture frame that they can talk and speak to mama through, and mama never has to pick up a phone or never has to push a button. She just needs to respond when they actually see or hear the voice of their loved one.
Any other changes in the industry that whether it's related to COVID or not, the folks that listen to this, a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this program, and one of the great opportunities for entrepreneurs is change of any kind. What kind of changes do you see, going forward as the population? I mean, we're going to have a reverse baby boom anytime soon in terms of the number of people needing a facility like yours?
You're already seeing that. I think what you're seeing, particularly with this pandemic that we're coming out of, is that how do I take care of mama or daddy at home? What are other options, as opposed to putting them in an institution? And I think that's going to play a large part. Most of all facilities, at least in the Memphis market, are occupancy is down. We have availability. That's from a number of factors, but one of the big ones is I don't want to put mama or daddy somewhere that I can't see them or I can't visit them. So I do think you're going to see families looking for options. How do I take care of mom at home? How do we age in place? What are services that can be brought into the home? So I think you're going to see a proliferation of that, along with all of those that come with changing the structure of the home. How do I make a bathroom door larger in an older home so that mom or daddy can get in if they're in a wheelchair? How do we set it up so that we're ripping out tubs and putting in walk-in showers and things like that? So I do think you're going to see that. And also, I think you're going to start seeing a lot of consolidation in facilities. I think you're going to see a lot of these individual, particularly assisted livings. I think you're going to see either some of them close, or they're going to be bought by a regional or a national company, just because of economies of scale. A small facility just not going to be able to sustain itself. Sure.
What about standalone housing? I think you mentioned that y'all have a little bit of that. It seems that might be a kind of a happy medium between staying, in a neighborhood not near medical facilities by themselves, but a little more independent. How does that sort of thing maybe fit into the business model going forward?
I think what you would see is that if you can design a neighborhood, particularly for developers that are designing neighborhoods, and there is some kind of centralized location, whether it's a clubhouse, whether it is some kind of small office building that might have a grocery store, a pharmacy, a cleaners, even a small minor med inside of it, so that within that neighborhood you are able to get some of the resources that you might need. I think you're also going to start seeing, particularly places like Trezvant, which is a retirement community, are going to start having more of those people that are wanting the independence of an independent home, freestanding home, while being attached to a larger community that does have more offerings. So it wouldn't surprise me if in the very near future, we're not seeing some kind of hybrid of that.
Yeah, that would seem to make a lot of sense, particularly in, well, really either in urban or rural areas. Rural areas might actually need it a little bit more if you could kind of consolidate retired folks together and get medical attention, kind of urgent care closer to them.
Right.
Because that was always my concern. My folks are doing well, but my in-laws had some problems, and the biggest problem is they're so far away from me, or they're far away from a support system, and that's what I think a lot of the younger retired people really attract them maybe to a facility like yours, is that if something happens, there's somebody close by that can respond.
Right. And placing my mother somewhere, that was, after my father died, that was one of the things when we were looking for her, is where are those services close? And so we picked a place. It was a condo, but there was a bank, there was a grocery store, there was the pharmacy, there was the gas station, there was everything probably within about a mile's radius of her, that if she needed to get to, it was easy for her to get to and to navigate. So I think you're going to start seeing people look not only just at the amenities of where they're moving, but what are the amenities surrounding that support somebody that is aging, that is able to live independently, but it's going to be needing those services.
Yeah, I guess Florida as a retirement destination is kind of way ahead of us on this. You've got the Village, which is kind of what you just described on a much larger scale.
Right. Yeah, and I think you're going to start seeing those innovations. Normally, the East and West Coast are most innovative, and it slowly makes its way into the center of the country. So I do think you're going to start seeing a lot of that innovation happen on both coasts. And then over the course of time, as they work through what works and what doesn't, because you're going to have some that are very innovative and cutting edge. And while that's great, it may not be sustainable long term. And so I think you'll see a lot of that filter through either East or West Coast. And then as that becomes sustainable and pretty standard for the industry, you'll start seeing that move more into the middle of the country.
How does aging factor into this in terms of, to use a colloquial expression, 50 is the new 30 or 50 is the new 40. People are living longer and they're healthier longer. I've noticed that with my parents' generation. They didn't smoke, for example, as much as their parents did. And I think that has a huge impact in terms of how long they're living. How does that figure into this conversation?
It's huge because, as you say, people are healthier, they're living longer. And most of the time, what's going to push them to make a change is there's either going to be a health scare of some type, or there's going to be a lifestyle change, whether a spouse dies or, they need to be closer to children or grandchildren. So I think from that standpoint, what you don't want to do is wait until you have that crisis moment. Go ahead and have a plan. Go ahead and be set up somewhere so that when you get to a point that you need those services, they are there and they're available. Because when you get into a crisis situation, then you're scrambling to take the first thing that's available, and that may not be the best fit. The other thing is that as everyone's aging, you have this just massive number of specialists now, rather than just your general internist, but now you have your cardiologist and your hematologist and your podiatrist and your asthma doctor and all those kinds of things. So I think, as you're thinking about this as population ages, where are you going to be able to go and have all of those services that you need in order to maintain your health, so that you can stay independent as long as possible?
You see a time when, an entity like yours might have a off-campus offering as kind of a gateway into the on-campus offering, where you're giving services to people in their homes?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that we talk about quite often, is a concept that's called a CCRC without walls, where you offer people on your waiting list or people that have a financial investment in you, that you offer services to them. Now, some of that is regulated by state and what you can offer or not offer based upon what you're licensed to do. But I do see that there's quite a bit that we can provide, and there's obviously places around the country that do that. So I do think that is something that you're going to start seeing more and more of as we look to incorporate some of these concepts of how do we engage the community with our organizations, how do we make sure that we are meeting the needs of the community that surrounds us while still maintaining those people in their independent homes as long as possible.
You've, as you've said, you've kind of dedicated your life to healthcare. How did you navigate that? How did that become what you wanted to do with your life?
Well, grew up with my grandparents, either visiting them or them coming and living with us over a period of time. And so when I was going through my master's, the last 6 months, I had to do an internship, and I opted to do that in a nursing home. And as part of that internship, qualified to get my nursing home license. And I love the geriatric community. It's my passion. It's my calling. Have friends that work at St. Jude, and bless them and appreciate them, but there's no way that I could be around kids all day long. I just love the fact that we're able to give people the best quality of life that they've got at the end of their life, for however long that they're here with us. And so making sure that those years are meaningful, not only for the resident, but also for the family.
Well, I'm certainly glad you're doing it. It's important, and it's important that we honor those that are older, and as you say, to make sure that they're not just warehoused, and
right.
That it's meaningful. And every stage of your life, is a little bit different. Just as soon as you get down, being in your 20s, and all of a sudden you're in your 30s, and you just as soon as you get having kids down, then they're moving away. Life is about change, and Trezvant is really well known for keeping people engaged and being a real community, as opposed to just a collection of people.
Yes, and we strive ourselves to improve on that every single day. So thank you.
Well, very good. Well, Paul, I appreciate your time. I found this fascinating conversation, particularly as we look forward in the future of what the future of your industry might be. And I appreciate you being on Ask Alan.
I appreciate the invitation.
Right,
thank you.
Well, everybody, that's all for this episode. Please share this or forward it if you think you might know somebody that's got older parents, or they're older themselves, and they're looking at what their options might be. This be a good place to start thinking about what your strategy is for the next chapter of your life. This is Alan Crone with Paul Martin. Paul is going to go out and make some folks' lives better, and I'm going to go get some justice. Thank you very much.